We're ready.
All right, Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to our fourth session of the Parenting Seminar Series. Today's topic is rules and etiquette of Ramadan fasting for parents of young and teenage children. My name is Sister Mariam Razvi, and I will be your MC today, inshallah. This seminar is going to focus on practical ways for parents to reconnect with Allah on a daily basis during the month of Ramadan. We are going to start with a recitation of Quran by one of our Rise Online students, Sukaina Jaffrey. Sukaina, whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi hasma rabbikal a'la. Allazi khalaqa fasawwa. Wallazi qaddara fahada. Wallazi akhrajal mar'a. Faj'alahu ghusaan ahwa. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد في أمان الله.
MashaAllah. Thank you, Sukaina. That was a beautiful recitation. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. We will now begin our seminar, and I would like to welcome Sheikh Salim. Sheikh Salim was born and raised in the United States. After completing his BS and MS in computer science from Stanford University in California, he worked in Silicon Valley as a software engineer and then an engineering manager. In 2004, he left his job and moved to Qom to study in the Hawza and completed his MA degree from Al Mustafa University in 2014. From 2014 to 2019, he was a spiritual guide of a private full-time Islamic school in Ontario, Canada. As of July 2020, he is the Dean of Mission at Rise Academy and the Assistant Resident Scholar of Sabah Center in San Jose, California. He is also pursuing a doctorate degree in educational leadership from Western University.
Thank you so much, Sister Mariam. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Okay, I wanted to say welcome all the parents who are joining us this morning, and may Allah reward you, or this afternoon, wherever you may be, may Allah reward you for your concern and care in doing the tarbiyah and raising your children in a manner which is pleasing to Allah and in line with the teachings of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. Inshallah, today we want to, we're just a few days away from the beginning of the best month of the year. And for parents, sometimes it can be a time of particular concern, especially parents who have younger children, because we know that fasting is one of those things which creates some challenges and tests for us as parents, for our children. And so really the purpose for the seminar today is to look at What are some of the teachings that we have in this regard, and how can we take a balanced approach? And I want to begin by just quoting this verse from the Quran, from Surah Al-Baqarah. This verse is verse 189, where Allah Ta'ala is talking. It actually appears right after the place in Surah Baqarah where Allah talks about the month of Ramadan and fasting in the month of Ramadan. Then he says, "A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, yas'alunaka 'anil ahilla." They question you concerning the new moons. Say they are timekeeping signs for the people and for the sake of Hajj. قل هي مواقيت للناس والحج وليس البر بأن تأتوا البيوت من ظهورها ولكن البر من اتقى. It is not piety that you enter the houses from their rear. وأتوا البيوت من أبوابها. Rather, piety is personified by one who is God-weary and enter houses from their doors. وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. And be wary of Allah so that you may be felicitous. Now, there's one time where we approach this verse, like let's say from the perspective of an astronomer, a scientist, and we can take something from the verse from that perspective, where Allah is saying that when you look at these, the moon, and you study planetary objects, you should realize that there's divine wisdom behind them, and they are there for a reason. They're there to help you keep time. Like, it's not random. They're there to help determine when you start your obligations, when you end your obligations. That's from the perspective of a scientist. But what's very interesting is some of these verses in the Quran, we can approach them as parents, and we can say that, like, what does this verse teach me as a parent? And here, one of the takeaways as a parent, when I look at this verse, I can say that, if people are asking the Prophet about the new moons, and they're curious about that, they're wondering about that, is there a possibility that that's something that is a question that could be there for my children as well? And this whole ritual we have of moon sighting and looking forward to the new moon, it's something which is actually referred to in the Quran, and it's worth my looking into that and seeing if I can adopt it as a parent. But beyond that, I'm here where the verse says that when you enter, every house has a door, and when you want to enter the house, enter that house through the door. Don't try to go through in a different way. Well, as a parent, when I'm trying to help my children in being able to take on this obligation of fasting when they come of age, I want to do it the right way. I want to go through the door, and I want to make sure that I'm not trying to figure out my own way of getting into this house of wisdom, into the whatever mercy and blessings are there for those who accomplish their obligations and perform their obligations to God. And so it's very important as a parent that I understand, well, what is that way? What is the door to this house? How can I be the one how can I play that role of being a facilitator and a guide to my children so that they can know about the house, but not just know about the house, that they can know how to get inside it as well. And that's really the purpose behind our seminar this morning. Alhamdulillah, we're blessed to have our community members at large here today, as well as we have our wonderful parents from the RISE educational system, and we have a number of staff members as well from both RISE Academy and RISE Online, and I'm sure many others joining us from who are parents in the community whose children go to the Sunday schools, whose children might attend other schools. You're all welcome, alhamdulillah, and it's nice to see you all. Okay, and inshallah, I don't plan on talking too theoretical. I do want to give a lot of just practical tips, inshallah, and if there are any questions throughout the course of what I'm talking about, then feel free to send that to me over private chat on Zoom. I should say here that for those of you who are joining in on YouTube, that's great, that's fine. I think that we're going to be monitoring the YouTube channel as well for any comments or questions that are posed there. But if you want to be a little bit more interactive, you can always join in on the Zoom call. Okay, now just a brief review about fasting and its importance. Fasting is one of the arkan of Islam. Like Islam, the Ahlul Bayt have told us that Islam it's like a house, like it's like a structure that has these foundational supports, and one of those foundational supports is fasting. It's considered extremely important in terms of securing one's religious practice. And we fast primarily because it is a command of Allah. And, as such, it needs to be treated like that. This is not, as a parent, it's not up to me to, command my children in this regard or to prevent them in this regard. This is Allah's command. And that's from the beginning. I need to take that approach when it comes to fasting. Okay, this is from God. And there are many, many benefits that are mentioned in hadith about fasting, reminding us of hunger. We live in a modern era where hunger is seen as like a bad thing, especially in a Western lifestyle. As soon as you get hungry, okay, snack. Traditionally that wasn't the case, and hunger was something that people dealt with, and they learned a lot from that process. It kept them humble, and we need that reminder. And even our children, to a certain extent, of course, they don't have the capacity to bear until they get older. I'm talking about, I'm not talking about like a young child here. I'm talking about, when a child gets that physical ability, 7 years old typically and above. They also need this reminder. Health benefits. Fasting has a lot of health benefits. You guys know that in recent years, there's been a huge explosion of interest in intermittent fasting, and it wasn't there even like a decade ago. And so people are finding out more and more about the health benefits of not eating for a certain period of time. There are incredible spiritual benefits that can be gotten. On the right-hand side here, I excerpted, I actually appropriated somebody's image where they put up the famous Hadith al-Qudsi, where Allah Ta'ala is reported to have said that as-sawmu li wa ana ujzi bihi, or wa ana ujza bihi, however it may be read. Fasting is for me, and I am the one who rewards it, or I am the reward for it. It's a very powerful hadith in terms of somebody wanting to get closer to Allah. Community benefits. Fasting brings the community together. It's a community act of worship. It's an opportunity to serve Allah, to have to be able to tell Allah, when the stomach is hungry, it's like a statement that I am your abd, I'm at your service. And it's a wonderful feeling that sometimes, it's hard to get that same type of, to feel that same type of privilege of being Allah's abd, but fasting gives us that opportunity. Now, what I would like to convey overall, in this seminar is that as parents, it's important that we take a balanced approach, and we try to enter into the home through the door, as that verse said. We want to avoid going to the min or to the max, and being, involved in education, in Islamic educational institutes for some time now, and interacting with a lot of children and their parents. I have seen some trends of going to the extremes, and I'm going to list a few of them here. There's other ways of going, this way or that way as well, but I just wanted to point out some of those that I hear about, and this is just for the purpose of education. So we can all look at this and ask ourselves, well, where are we? Are we taking that balanced approach or not? So we have one extreme, which is the extreme where somebody says that, okay, well, I think that my mukallafa or baligha or mukallaf baligh child is too young, right? They're baligh, okay, but I think they're too young to fast, so I'm not going to let them do that. Okay, why? Oh, they're too young. Okay, so it's a taklif, right? I mean, when you become baligh, it's taklif. So do I have that? Who am I to step in front of that and say that, okay, I'm going to be the channel of deciding what is wajib, what is not wajib for my child, right? Okay, or in a related note, fasting is such a difficult thing. My child needs to be extremely pampered. They need to be, they need to, like, let's say, not lift a finger. They need to not, they need to sleep all the time. They need to, and it's like, wait a minute, have you actually seen like what's happening with their child? Do they enjoy, like being, being in a state of like almost like a coma state for 30 years? for 30 days? Like, do they enjoy that? Or are they like kids? I mean, the kids like to, be active. Kids like to run around, and they like to enjoy, different things that come up. Right? So that's one extreme. And then we have the other extreme, which is kind of like the opposite almost, which is that, no, it's month of Ramadan, I'm fasting, and my 6-year-old must fast with me, and I'm gonna give them like, I'm gonna award them with like huge prize money and give them lots of gifts at the end if at 5 years old they're able to fast the whole month. I'm gonna announce it to the community as well. I'm gonna have a party to celebrate my non-baligh child fasting the whole month. Okay, well, I appreciate the for sure that parent wants to do the right thing, but is that the path of the Ahlul Bayt? Did they tell us that our 5-year-olds should be fasting, our 6-year-olds should be fasting? Did they say that they should be fasting the whole day? Did they say that 7-year-olds should be fasting the whole day? We're going to see in just a bit here that that's not the approach that they recommended to us. So we want to enter into the home through the door, as the verse said. Okay, or let's say my non-baligh child is extremely hungry, but I'm going to insist that they keep on fasting. We've come across some cases of that, or my baligh child, now somebody who, let's say, has a baligh child, and they're going through extreme suffering or feeling sick, but I'm going to insist they continue. Well, that's not valid, right? That goes against the rules. Where if somebody is getting sick because of fasting, and that sickness is not just, normal type of sickness that people get, and normally people might feel a little bit off, that fast is invalid, so they shouldn't be fasting, right? The rules are very clear. Or we have another extreme, which is that I'm extremely pessimistic about fasting in month Ramadan, but I expect my child to look forward to fasting. Well, that's not going to work, right? I mean, as parents, we need to set the example. So if we're bubbling with excitement and energy, and we're like really looking forward to this month of Ramadan, that type of attitude rubs off on our family. But if we're taking the approach of like, oh my God, it's like such a, we're going to like, as if it's like the jihad of the century, and we're going to have to be like, okay, okay, I understand that there's some difficulty, but it's it's life, right? I mean, it happens, right? And people have been doing it for centuries, and they've managed, and we can manage as well, inshallah. Okay, now let's look at some of the specific advice that we have. We have a hadith from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, at the age of 7, we ask our children to fast to their capability, either half of the day or more or less, and we order them to break their fast when they become hungry or thirsty. This is very important. We order them to break their fast when they become hungry or thirsty. We don't tell them, keep on going and I'll give you a prize if you finish. That's not the approach. This is so that they become used to fasting. Okay, it's a training period, right? Thus, you should ask your male children to fast at the age of 9 and tell them to break their fast when they're hungry or thirsty. Of course, that's until they become a mukallaf, baligh, and then it's an obligation. But by that time, they've been trained. Now, the approach that we take is we don't take our ahkam directly from hadith. We let the experts do that because it's not an easy thing to do. It requires, that's what ijtihad is about. So, for example, Ayatollah Sistani hafidahullah, when he's commenting about this idea of non-baligh children fasting, he says that it's mustahab to train boys to fast from the age of 7 according to their ability till midday or more or less until they become used to fasting. So, they wake up for suhoor, they do their fast, they go through all the things, and okay, now they get hungry. Let's say they're like, quite hungry at lunchtime. Okay, alhamdulillah, that's awesome, great job. For example, let's say, Ahmad, keep it up. Inshallah, we can do it tomorrow as well too. And let's say tomorrow comes, like he does it again. Alhamdulillah, that's awesome, encouraging, that's great. Maybe the next day, he has to break it at 10 o'clock. Okay, well, inshallah, the next day you'll be able to do better. Then the next day he's able to keep it at 2 o'clock. Oh, mashallah, great. Then let's say the next day he says that I want to keep it the whole day. Then Ahmad, let's say he was 7 years old, like, Ahmad, it's not the time yet. Not now. Inshallah, Ahmad, when you get to be 12 years old, 13 years old, then you'll be able to keep it the whole day. Like, oh, wow, I can do it at that time, so it becomes something that Ahmad looks forward to doing. Now, asking them to fast for the whole day when it is difficult for them and forcing them to do so is not established in the Sharia. It is mustahab to train girls in this manner as well, although there's no particular starting age for doing so. So usually it will be around 7 years old for girls as well, when they, physically are able to start doing this half fasting. Maybe it's 6 years old, where they're able to physically keep these half fasts. So then they get trained. And when they become mukallafa, it's like, okay, they've been looking forward to that time when they can keep that full fast. So practical suggestions is that before physical maturity has developed, shouldn't be hurt. Children who are younger, like let's say 5 or younger, typically they do not have that physical maturity to keep even the half fasting. And it's not something that has been recommended. Even the Ahlul Bayt wouldn't ask their children to even keep the half fasts before the age of 7, as we saw from that hadith. Fasting after physical maturity has developed, but before coming of age. Okay, for example, let's say for girls, 7, 8 years old, 6, 7, 8, maybe for boys, for example, let's say 10, 11, 12, somewhere around there. Okay, should be asked to break fast when they are thirsty or hungry. So they keep the fast and then they break it when they're thirsty or hungry. Now, the approach is to create excitement about being able to fast the whole day when they become of age. And I've seen this being used these techniques by others. Personal experience has also shown that in many cases this works. That actually, like when you tell the child, you make it be like, that's something that you can only do when you get to be of age. Or maybe let's say the year before they become of age, like then you're like, you give them a couple of days where they can keep the whole fast, and like, oh, that's, I really want to do that, I'm looking forward to it, right? Rather than, let's say, since they were sometimes you have cases where kids, since they were like 6 years old, they've been fasting the whole day. Well, there's nothing to look forward to when they become baligh, right? And sometimes those same children will actually experience a negative reaction when they get older because they were asked to do it before they were actually ready to. Avoid asking young children, "Are you fasting today?" This is something that in some cultures they have this tendency. Not all the culture, but some they grow in, and like you have, let's say, grown-ups, and they see like a young kid. Now the adult is feeling hungry, right? So they're thinking about like their own fast. So they ask this kid, "Hey, are you fasting?" Like, well, like, he's a kid, right? Why should you fasting? I mean, it's your job to fast, not his job to fast. I'm talking about like a young kid, right? So that sometimes the things that we might have inherited from like our the cultural sort of things, they need to be looked at and re-examined from the perspective of the teachings of the religion and the Ahlul Bayt. Now, let's talk a little bit about those who are mukallaf, those who are baligh. Sometimes parents, understandably, like, for parents, children are the apple of their eyes, the delight of their hearts, and they don't want anything to happen to them, and that's totally understandable. And that sometimes, though, that concern, it creeps into an area which is actually not the domain of the parents to decide. As parents, we are just custodians. We're not the ones who are providing and sustaining our children. It is Allah. And when it comes to the obligations, they're obligations, and that's the way it is. So the fact is that fasting is an obligation. It is an obligation for those who have come of age. Yes, if it entails significant harm or unbearable difficulty, then it's not. Okay, so if there's a child who, they can't, or if they do it, it's going to really harm them and they're going to get sick, then they should not be fasting. But oftentimes, parents might misjudge this, and for no valid reason, they come in, they become the barrier for that child to perform their obligation. Now, that's very problematic. Imagine what kind of how the child will have to make up that fast, later on in their lives. It'd be very difficult, and then the parents will also be responsible as to why is it that they prevented their child from performing their Islamic obligations. Now, brothers and sisters, remember that the human body is amazing at being able to adapt. And we've seen this. Like I've seen children who are like, they look at their bodies, they're like, you know, you feel like there's not that much there because they're so young, but mashallah, they come and, they're able to like just, they do it, and they do it for the whole month, and to me, they're like Ramadan heroes. And I try to tell the children this, that like, you guys are heroes. Like, what you're doing with like, your Quran reading, you're, waking up for suhoor, you're like, fasting, and like, mashallah, you guys are just great. And that's the thing we have to realize, is that with the help of Allah, children who are baligha, they are able to do this. And there's something special about the month of Ramadan when you have the community together, where it creates that sort of supportive effect on one another, that ta'awun ala al-birri wa taqwa. It's quite amazing. Remember that Allah's taking it upon himself to provide rizq, right? He says that we should, he says that he determines when it is that children should fast. And he's the one who says that I'm going to take care of them. So we have to trust him. No, feeling hungry during the day is natural, and it's also a means of spiritual growth. But by being patient and having children, having wholesome suhoor and iftar meals, children will adapt. So part of the issue sometimes is that as parents, we're not, rather than trying to, we're focusing on the wrong thing. We're pressing the wrong button. What we need to be doing is to like facilitate our children having like proper fasts. And, it can make a huge difference. One of the things that troubles me is when I see children, eating mostly candy for iftar, or not doing suhoor, or not eating the right thing for suhoor. And it's like, it makes a huge difference in the quality of the fast. It can be, in one case, it can be that, the child is suffering from 10 o'clock in the morning onwards. In other case, it can be that the child just feels like a bit of hunger throughout the day, but they're fine, right? And it can make that much of a difference depending on, how it is. Or, for example, when let's say the children are eating all night, and their body never has a chance to like digest the iftar, then they won't have that type of hunger for suhoor. So, parents need to step in and say, okay, like, yeah, of course, you can have fun with the food and eat and snack and everything, but it has to be a period where you give your stomach a break as well. There has to be, that sense of like meals. Brothers and sisters, my encouragement here is that as parents, we need to remember the days of when we were children. And sometimes as parents, we forget what is it that a child gets excited about. And sometimes we look at ourselves and we compare ourselves, and we say that our children are thinking about things the same way. So we look at Ramadan, we're like, oh my God, like, I have to cook more, I have to manage cranky kids, I have to wake up for suhoor, I have to do this, I have to do that. And it's like sometimes it's like a big headache. But from the perspective of a child, Ramadan is like, it's cool. It's like there's a lot of like interesting, new, fun things about it. Kids love the idea of like, let's wake up super early in the morning. Like, really? Oh wow, that's cool. I'm talking about like this is in the natural, type of nature of a child. Now, for whatever reasons, it might not be the case this applies to all children. I'm just talking about like typically, when you have younger children, like we can wake up early in the morning, moon sighting, the idea of foods and drinks that have been forgotten in the modern world. I can tell you that growing up, I had no idea what chia seeds were. Right? What's a chia seed? Like, why would I care about? I think that we had like some chia toy or something like that. It was like I don't know what it was, like that thing. I don't know what, but chia seeds, right? And now it's like, oh, chia seed. Yeah, of course you can put them in water, and like, and you have kids talking about this stuff. It's like, whoa, cool. Like spelt flour, right? Like, who's heard of spelt flour, right? Ancient Khorasan flour. Like, these are things which, they've been forgotten, and people are going for like packaged donuts and these type of things and bagels. And it's like, okay, yeah, you can do that, but if you have this other stuff, it's going to last you 3 times as long or twice as long. People, for example, they go for quick cooking oats these days, but that compared to like, you'd say the old style oats, and you make something from that, it's a lot more, it lasts you a lot longer. And so many other things like that, where Ramadan gives us the opportunity to talk about these, like to research this and to like bring them into our diets, and children find this interesting. It's like, wow, that's cool. Quran reading, memorization, understanding, there's something about it that usually kids, especially if it's done the right way, it's not forced upon them, it's, the positive sort of spirit, they're attracted to it. connecting to the Imam of the time. Like month of Ramadan is a special time for that. The du'as that we recite, a lot of them have to do, some of them were given to us by the Imam, and a lot of them have to do with praying for him. The communal gatherings, the iftar. Like I know my children, they've set the table, like a couple hours in advance, for iftar. They've planned out the whole menu. They've, for the month, they know, we have the best like desserts and everything like that, all that in the month of Ramadan. And it's like, wow, the children are really getting into it, right? And then of course there's the Eid and everything associated with that. So it might be the case that sometimes the parents are like crying and they're worried, and the child is like, this is awesome. Like I'm totally looking forward to this. Now, just a reminder that, it's not the case that all children who are baligh will be fasting all the days. And that's not what the rules of Islam stipulate. We have some scenarios where they shouldn't be fasting. Like, let's say, and these are real cases. My 9-year-old daughter consistently faints when she doesn't eat every 6 hours, and she fears that this will happen when she fasts. She shouldn't be fasting. Okay, even if she fears that this is going to happen, because fainting is not something which is it's a harm. It's not something which is acceptable for a child to be fainting. That child shouldn't be fasting. My 13-year-old baligh son has a valid reason to fear getting considerably sick because of fasting this year. Not just that he's gonna, get really hungry or he's gonna have a headache or something. No. Let's say there's something about his body, it's some struggle that he has where there's a fear of getting considerably sick, that he shouldn't be fasting. My daughter is recovering from a cold, and fasting would prolong her sickness. She shouldn't be fasting, right? Like, because it's not just when fasting will make somebody sick, but also when they are recovering. If it's going to prolong their recuperation in recovery, then they shouldn't be fasting. My son is hungry to the point where I will need to call an ambulance. There are some kids where, for whatever reason, they're very, very affected by it. And it's not just that they're saying it. Like they actually, like, it's like they're gonna need an ambulance, right? Well, that's extreme circumstances. They shouldn't be fasting. Okay, so like the point is that we need to be aware of the exceptions and trust the system of laws that have been given to us. These guidelines are on the basis of divine wisdom. I wanted to just share an anecdote. This is from Shaheed Muhammad Bakr Sadr, where just I think yesterday or the day before was the anniversary of his and his sister's martyrdom. May Allah Ta'ala be pleased with them and elevate their ranks, and the ranks of all the shuhada. It's very interesting to see how some of our great scholars would deal with this concept of parenting and children. So you see here that when his children reached the age of taklif, he would perform wudu and lead them in prayers, and then he would respectfully correct their mistakes in accordance with the method Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein had taken, which itself is really beautiful. To think that he's taking out that time, he's showing them by example, he's taking that positive tarbiyati approach. He would encourage his children to recite Quran and dua and ziyarah. He considered praying on time and waking up for Salat al-Fajr very important. He used to say that if a person stays up late at night and knows that he won't be able to wake up for the morning prayers, it's not allowed for him to sleep. This is the excerpt that I wanted to mention. One of our family traditions was that the first year one of our daughters would fast, she would be allowed to choose whatever she wants to eat for iftar. It's her call, as long as it's reasonable. And at the end of the month, she'd be allowed to choose any gift she wanted for a reasonable sum of money. So you see here that there's a special understanding and special accommodations being made, but there's still the expectations. I recall reading a story from one of the daughters of Imam Khomeini, and she was saying that when I became of age, I think it was the summertime fasting, and there were some days where, for whatever reason, I wouldn't do the suhoor. So on those days where the hunger became very difficult for me, my father would actually travel with me. We would go out of town, and I would break my fast, according to the rules that are there, and then I would do the qada later on. Now, is it allowed to do that? Yes, it is makruh, but it is allowed to travel for that purpose of breaking the fast. And so sometimes, parents, let's say you have a child who's particularly struggling, maybe they need a break once in the middle or something like that. You could consider doing this as well. Finally, I just wanted to offer some general tips, about this, and then inshallah we'll see if there's any comments or questions. So before Shahr Ramadan, cutting down on addictive substances like caffeine. I guess this is more for us, but sometimes we see children doing this type of thing as well. Sometimes teenagers are unfortunately like they're hooked to caffeine. These type of things, if it can really cause, like especially the first few days, a bitter experience, a bitter start to the month of Ramadan, if somebody hasn't prepared from beforehand. The idea of reducing portion size, again, sometimes we get into these bad habits of just constantly snacking, of never feeling hungry. Even, if you look at the dietary science or dietary recommendations, best practices, it's not advisable to do that. It's not something which is, healthy for the body, but sometimes we have bad habits. So now it's the time to be looking at that and getting ready for this. As a family, planning out special activities, menus, rituals, finding out what's the latest out there in terms of like products from, let's say, Kissa Kids, from others. There's a website, I know you all are all probably aware of it, Play Pure, where they are, they've compiled some of those resources. So, depending on what age your children are, seeing if it's age appropriate. The moon sighting ritual. When I take my kids, sometimes, I'm not very good at the whole like having like sophisticated binoculars and telescopes and all that. It's not my thing, or haven't learned it, whatever. But sometimes we just go and take like this old binocular and we just try to do it. And for some reason, my kids really enjoy it. Like it's kind of exciting for them, and so sometimes, you can consider doing this. And they're actually like, usually most cities, they have groups of where people are actually like really good at this and they have expertise. And sometimes it's, with the brothers and sisters of Ahlul Sunnah. But the thing is that it can become something where, as a community, it can be a community ritual, if not at least a family ritual. Finding out ways of creating excitement and being optimistic about month of Ramadan. During Shahr Ramadan, try new approaches to eating. Quality over quantity. I don't know, for some reason, when I was being raised, I had this understanding that the more you eat for suhoor, the better, the easier your fast is going to be. But it turns out that what really matters is what you eat. And, of course, you need to have a certain amount, but it, like, you can have a whole, let's say, meal of biryani or something like that, and you're hungry by, within let's say by noontime, and then you can have, for example, something with oats in it, and it lasts you until Maghrib time. And it's quite surprising how it's not really about the quantity. The importance of avoiding dehydration. That's something for our children. We also want to, condition them to like drinking a lot of water in the night times. Staying fit. This idea of like just being sedentary and parked in front of screens throughout the month of Ramadan. It's devastating to the body. It's devastating many times to the soul. Unfortunately, social media usage increases among Muslims, like by, I don't know, I saw a statistic of like 30% in the month of Ramadan. And, I don't know what else. It's unfortunately some of the best, like the most expensive drama productions are made in Muslim countries during the month of Ramadan. It's like, unfortunately, it becomes like a far cry from like the spiritual experience that, we were supposed to have. Now, what I'm just saying here is that we need to be balanced, right? Like it shouldn't be a month of Netflix. And we shouldn't sort of create this impression that, oh, you're fasting. Oh, okay, then you can't take a walk. You can't. No, children actually need that, and we need that as well too. And in fact, if you have a moderate amount of exercise, then the fasting usually goes easier. One tip is, there's a lot of competitions going on related to Quran and other areas in the month of Ramadan. Maybe it might work for your children to have that be a goal, something that they're working on, so they can keep them occupied. Communal gatherings, but communal gatherings with a purpose. It's not just a matter of, oh, I've taken my kid to the mosque or the center and I've done my job as a parent. No, the child could go there and just because they're there doesn't mean that they're safe or that they're having a positive experience. As parents, our duty extends to more than that. Having said that, if we do the right thing, then it can be the case that these communal gatherings can be very positive and uplifting for our families. But we have to be careful and to take the right approach. And then, making dua from now, like the way that Ahlul Bayt taught us is that, the month of Ramadan, it requires Allah's special help to be able to perform the obligations during the month. And they would pray for that special tawfiq. We should be doing that as well. And inshallah, I'm hopeful that with the help of Allah, He'll show us how to perform our responsibilities and enable us to perform them in the best way, inshallah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. Allahumma salli. Okay.
Sheikh Salim, thank you so much for your presentation. A lot of practical tips and definitely an eye-opening presentation for those of us with small children. I just wanted to say this event is sponsored by the Rise Education System. It's a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our goal is to create a global community of learners. We have Rise Academy, a face-to-face school in San Jose, California, and Rise Online nationwide in North America, with inshallah the aim to go global. We at Rise Education System hope to continue presenting seminars on topics that impact our youth. Please follow us on our YouTube channel to stay connected and receive updates. And we will be posting a link to a survey in the Zoom chat and the description of the videos on YouTube. Please actively participate in the survey so that we can plan further seminars, inshallah, based on your needs. We will now open for Q&A. You can chat your question in Zoom or on YouTube. Both platforms should be open now. Please, we will take only questions related to the seminar topic.
Thank you, Sister Miriam. So there's a question here in the chat window of, for these valid reasons, do the kids have to make up the fasts, and how long do they have to do this? So I won't talk about every case here, but generally speaking, if it is a condition that's related to, let's say, excessive weakness, unbearable hunger, or let's say a temporary sickness, then yes, they would have to do the qada. Or let's say the parent took them out of towns like in the morning so that they could break their fast, then they would have to make up the qada. But if it's related to like a chronic issue, or a prolonged sickness that lasts the whole year, then after that year, then they would no longer be liable to making up the qada for it. Now, in general, for making up qada fasts, it is recommended to make them up within the year after, before the next month of Ramadan. However, it's important to refer to the rulings of your marja. Some of the marja have said that it's ihtiyat wajib to do that before the next month of Ramadan. Some of them have said ihtiyat mustahab to doing that. And so, it's possible to do ruju. For example, I know Aidul Istani says ihtiyat mustahab to make it up by next month of Ramadan. It's possible to do ruju to his opinion if you're doing taqweed of another marja, and in that way, it can be made up at any time, but not to prolong making up so long that it becomes like kind of taking it lightly. However, there's a special fidya that needs to be given if it's not made up in that first year. But these are some of the details that usually are covered in ahkam sessions relating to the month of Ramadan. I don't want to go into the details for this session. So Sister Maria, I'm not monitoring the YouTube thing, so I don't know if there's any questions or if you have access to that. Or
I don't have access to YouTube, but I was told that I would get them in my chat. Yep. I mean, if there aren't any questions so far, I had one question about because a lot of times, there's a lot of gray areas between the ages, baligh, all that stuff. And you had mentioned like coming of age, right? So like a couple of years before their coming of age, you have them practice. So, specifically, I guess I'm asking for boys, because I have all boys. So, if 15 is the baligh age, is the time to be practicing for them to be doing those full day fasts, somewhere between 9 and 15, or should we be waiting, or is it more based on, their ability level?
Mm-hmm. So, typically the coming of age for boys in the part of the world that we live in is 13. Okay, and so if we take the guidelines that we have from the age of 7, it's a guideline. It's not a it's not like a hard and fast rule. From the age of 7, that's when we should start talking to them about it, encouraging them for that. Now, as parents, we need to be looking at the specifics of our child. And for some children at the age of 7, it's totally the right time. For others, they might have to wait until like 8 or let's say 9. And that's when they start doing these half fasts. So it's really about looking at them, looking at their physical development and seeing when is that right time. But at least talking from the age 7, start talking to them about it, encouraging them for that. There's another question in the chat window. My 10-year-old son really wants to do a full day fast this year. Is this something that we should allow him to do or to encourage a half day fast? So I personally, I would say that, we don't have like a recommendation from the Ahlul Bayt that a boy at that age should be fasting the whole year, for the whole day. So it's not something that's there. Now, is it wrong? No, it's not. It's not haram, but it's not something that like it's like, yeah, you should go and really do that. And in fact, the approach that I outlined earlier, which was one of like where you kind of make it be an incentive that when you get to be baligh, or let's say you get to be 12 years old right before you're going to get baligh, for example, let's say that they're going to typically become baligh at 13, although sometimes it happens, let's say at 12, sometimes even 11. Let's say, that, you kind of make an incentive, then generally that's a good approach to take. Now, if you as a parent find that, your son is like, he's doing the half fasts, okay, and that's being encouraged, and then he really wants this, and you think that it will actually be helpful, and it will be something that will encourage him, for the future, and if it's coming from him, then definitely you can consider doing it. And it can be like something that it's like, it's like, oh, you really like that? Okay, good. That's something that inshallah you can look forward to doing every day then, and then when you become of age. But that type of approach where it's coming from him, it's like really like 1 or something like that. On the other hand, I one of my teachers, his son was asking him for this, and he just flat out refused, and he's like, you like he said, I think he said that his son was even crying and asking. He's like, no, when the time comes, then you'll be keeping the fast for the whole day, and because that's how strongly he felt that we need to keep that as like the incentive and encouragement. So it's not, there's no like, it's not a wajib or haram thing here. It's really, as a parent, which strategy you want to take. I'm just sharing with you the different perspectives, and then looking at your child and the circumstances, then you can inshallah decide on that. There might be some families where there's an older sibling who's fasting, and so that's when once maybe you want to give your younger child a chance to like do that as well. Otherwise they'll feel really bad otherwise.
Just a reminder, the survey link has been posted in the chat, so we would really appreciate for all the participants to fill out that form. Sheikh Salim, do you have anything that you can kind of, sometimes we can learn the best from things that people have either tried and succeeded with, or tried and it hasn't worked, like actual practices that you yourself would do with your kids during the month of Ramadan, whether it's, I don't know, a tradition of you sitting down and reading a dua from Sahif Sajadi after Salat, or something, something very tangible that we can say, okay, let's try this specific thing. And then once we have one thing, we can kind of build off that, and, the kids will kind of find their path. But do you have any things that you have tried and succeeded and you feel like are very good things that we can apply this month?
That's a good question, Sister Mariam, and I don't hold myself up as an example for anyone or anything, but sometimes it's useful just to hear other people's experiences, and it's not like it's just kind of something to consider, right? So maybe I can mention a couple of things just from my own experiences with children who some of them have become of age recently. So one of the things that I think our our tradition of like family walks and family hikes actually began when my children started fasting, because they had become of age. And what we found was that, they were able to manage fine, whatever different activities, school, whatever, but it was in the last part of the fast where it became a little bit difficult for them. So that's when, my wife and I tried to arrange our schedule so that we could spend that time with them. And, that worked, that helped a lot to just have this tradition. Maybe the last, we timed it so that we would have let's say, 45 minutes to an hour outside. And then it would be like, okay, when we get home, then you're going to take your naps, right? And then, then they'll get that, that nap before iftar, and they'll be really excited about it because it's now, the iftar is coming, and that's something that really worked for us. What else? I think that, the whole the iftar planning thing and that it really was something exciting for them. For suhoor, we had them plan out from beforehand about the menus and everything like that. This thing was also good. Some of the special programs that are taking place now, especially with a lot of things online, my children tended to enjoy them. For example, there was last year we were not in California, but there was a Quran competition for children, being held from here. And my children found that really interesting. They found the Kahoot games really interesting. So finding out what's going on in other communities as well. Sometimes there was this one institution that was every day they were putting out 5 questions from the Quran where you had to go and find in the Quran different things. And for one of my children, it wasn't really something that they were interested in, but my other child was kind of into it because every day you would get a chance then to submit your answers, and then one winner would be picked. And so they found it really really exciting for them. So doing that research, I think, was something useful.
Yeah, those are really good tips. I think it's interesting because those are also ways to pass the time as well, really productive ways to pass that time as well, versus like you were saying, kind of being sedentary and just, Netflix or whatever screen time. There is one more question. I think this will be the last question. There's one more question in the chat.
Okay. Can you elaborate more on the suspicion of harm? Is the obligation age-wise or ability-wise for boys? My son was 12 years old last year, and alhamdulillah did a full 30 days of fasting. This year, new teenager, his eating has been disorderly and is below the weight that he should be. Last year he did full and he's not 15. Does he have the obligation to try full this year? So there is a very specific criteria for when a boy becomes mukallaf and baligh, and there are specific signs that will indicate that, and that is from the Sharia. Those signs are, for those of who are in the Islamic schools, those typically are going to be taught, by the whatever the system is in place to teach that. For those who are in Sunday schools, probably I'm pretty sure they also have something for that. But that's something that can be covered if need be, inshallah, separately. And in the case of doubt, as long as one is doubtful about whether they're baligh or not, then they're not baligh from a Sharia perspective. Now, once they become baligh from a Sharia perspective, then that taklif is there, but it becomes something now where along with that taklif, there are exceptions to it. So when there is fear of harm that would be considered mu'tana bihi, people would they would give it attention. They would be like, oh, that's harmful. And it's up to what the urf would say. If they would say that, yeah, for this person, they're going to be harmed by this, right? Then they're exempt. No, I'm for every child, obviously, they're going to probably lose some weight during the month of Ramadan. They're going to feel hungry, but there are some other children where it's something that there's a problem, right? They actually have a medical condition, and this is going to exacerbate it. So this is where, it's good for parents who have the situation to have a more one-on-one session with two people, both one somebody who's acquainted with the Islamic law so they can understand exactly what they are, and then also with somebody who has a good sense of nutrition and body and these type of things, where they can tell them what are the implications of fasting.
Right, inshallah. Thank you so much, Sheikh Salim. Jazakallah. We are going to end our program, inshallah, with recitation of Dua al-Hujjah by our Rise Online student, Jafar Ali.
Mrs. Mariam, one announcement for Rise Academy parents before the ending surah recitation. There is a Rise Academy parent meeting at 11, which will be on the same Zoom link. We will stop the live streaming at that time, so Rise Academy parents can stay after the recitation for the next part of the meeting, inshallah.
Inshallah. One second. All right, go ahead, Jafar.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد اللهم كل وليك حجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا وذليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعوا فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farjahum. Thank you so much, Jafar. Inshallah, may Allah hasten the return of our Imam. Thank you so much for attending the Rise Education System Parenting Seminar Series. Please follow us on our YouTube channel to stay connected and receive updates. And again, there was a link for the survey. Please fill that out and the descriptions of the YouTube videos. Please actively participate in the survey so that we can further plan seminars based on your needs again. Our next event for the parenting seminar is effects of popular shows and movies on children, Islamic rulings on viewing content and parenting strategies, inshallah, on May 22nd. Bi aman Allah to everybody, and thank you so much for attending and participating, and